Everyone in the galaxy believes the Chaos Gods are eternal, that they are timeless forces of nature, that they existed before civilization and will outlast it, that rage, decay, desire, and ambition will always give them form. This belief is not just wrong, it is the most dangerous misunderstanding in Warhammer 40,000 lore, because the Chaos Gods are not eternal beings, they are fossils, and the warp is not their kingdom, it is their graveyard. To understand this, we need to stop thinking about chaos as evil gods and start thinking about it as a failed psychic ecosystem. The warp was never meant to give birth to gods. In its earliest state, it was fluid, responsive, and reflective, a living sea of impressions shaped by the minds that brushed against it, not rulers, not predators, just echoes. The Old Ones understood this. They didn't worship the warp. They used it carefully, surgically, intelligently. And for millions of years, the warp remained relatively calm. Then civilization changed, not technologically, psychologically. The rise of mass sentient life flooded the warp with something new, sustained, repetitive emotion on a galactic scale, fear without resolution, violence without honor, desire without fulfillment, hope without progress. This was not balance, this was stagnation, and stagnation is poison to any ecosystem. The first warp entities to thrive were not gods. They were simple aggregations, emotional knots that fed on repetition. Patterns formed, feedback loops locked in. Over time, these knots became dense, self-reinforcing, resistant to change. Eventually, sentient, not because they evolved, but because they became trapped in the same psychic grooves long enough to wake up. Khorne is not rage itself. He is rage as it was once expressed. Personal, bloody, intimate, physical. A blade in the hand, an enemy with a face. Violence that felt meaningful. But the galaxy moved on. Modern warfare is distant, automated, statistical. Drone fleets, orbital strikes, exterminatus decrees signed in silence. Billions die without hatred. Khorne does not understand this. He feeds on the memory of what rage used to be. Tzeentch is no different. He is not knowledge. He is not change. He is scheming ambition, born in an era where progress came from plots, secrets, betrayals, and fragile power structures. Today, change is systemic. Algorithms govern fate. Bureaucracy outpaces conspiracies. Tzeentch keeps plotting because he cannot do anything else. His plans fail not because he intends them to, but because he cannot escape the logic loop he was born from. Nurgle is often misunderstood as entropy itself. He isn't. Entropy is silent and impartial. Nurgle is meaningful decay, rot with emotion, illness that brings despair but also community, suffering that feels intimate. But modern despair is hollow. It is quiet, administrative, normalized. People drown in meaninglessness, not grief. And Nurgle cannot feed on numbness, so he exaggerates, inflates, turns plagues into parodies, bloated theatrical grotesqueries, because subtle decay no longer nourishes him. Slaanesh suffers the most. She was born at the exact moment excess meant something, when sensation was dangerous, when indulgence shattered limits, when pleasure could destabilize a species. But the galaxy adapted. Excess is everywhere now, stripped of impact, stimulation without satisfaction, desire without fulfillment. Slaanesh must push further and further just to feel fed. That isn't growth. That's starvation behavior. This is why chaos never truly evolves. It recombines old aesthetics, recycles ancient symbols, replays the same wars with slightly different names. Because the Chaos Gods are not adapting to the galaxy. They are locked to it, as it once was. and the warp knows this. Signs of a deeper shift are already present. There are regions where demons weaken instead of strengthen, places where silence disrupts warp phenomena more than faith, battlefields where apathy suppresses manifestations chaos once thrived on. The warp is responding to something new, not stronger emotion, but emotional absence. Chaos spreads not because it is winning, but because it is destabilizing, like a dying star shedding mass before collapse. Warp storms aren't expansion, they are hemorrhaging. This reframes everything. The Chaos Gods are not the final threat. They are the last survivors of an obsolete psychic era. Their wars are not conquests. They are extinction spasms. This also explains why Chaos needs the Imperium, why it cannot destroy it outright. The Imperium preserves the emotional patterns that sustain chaos: fanaticism, hatred with targets, faith rooted in fear. Chaos doesn't want humanity to die. It wants humanity to never emotionally mature. And here is the truly terrifying implication. When the Chaos Gods finally collapse, when these fossilized emotional entities lose coherence, the warp will not become calm. It will become empty, no rage, no hope, no pleasure, no despair, just absence. And absence does not scream, it does not tempt, it does not corrupt, it erases. A warp without Chaos Gods would not be safer, it would be alien. Something new would form, not from emotion, but from the lack of it. Entities born from numbness, from silence, from civilizations that feel nothing when they die. Not gods, not demons, but predators that do not need worship, belief, or fear. The chaos. Gods are screaming because they know this. They are not trying to win. They are trying to remain relevant. And the galaxy is already moving past them. The story does not end with the collapse of the Chaos Gods. That is merely the transition point, because the warp does not tolerate emptiness for long. When Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh finally decay into incoherence, they will not leave behind a vacuum. They will leave behind a scar, and scars attract pressure. What comes next will not resemble chaos as the galaxy understands it. The next warp entities will not be born from excess emotion. They will be born from its absence, from civilizations that no longer rage when wronged, that no longer hope for change, that no longer despair at loss, that no longer feel pleasure as anything more than background noise. This is the psychic signature of the late Imperium. Not hatred, not faith, but exhaustion. Trillions of lives lived on autopilot. Obedience without belief. Suffering without meaning. Silence where emotion should be. This is poison to chaos, but it is nourishment to something far worse. Because entities born from emotional absence do not tempt, they do not bargain, they do not corrupt slowly, they overwrite. Imagine warp predators that do not manifest as demons with claws and horns, but as zones of conceptual erasure. Regions where psychic activity simply fails, where demons dissolve not in holy light, but in silence, where astropaths go blind because there is nothing left to hear, where faith does not empower miracles because belief itself produces no resonance. The Necrons may have brushed against this once. The Satan devoured stars, but what comes next will devour meaning. Even chaos would fear it. This is why the Chaos Gods scream louder in the 41st millennium than ever before, why incursions intensify, why the warp boils instead of flowing. They are not conquering, they are panicking, because once humanity stops feeding them rage with purpose, desire with intensity, despair with intimacy, and hope with ambition, the gods lose shape. They fragment, they fossilize further, and when enough fragments collapse, the warp's emotional spectrum shifts permanently. The final irony is this: the Emperor's dream may succeed in the worst possible way. A galaxy united, order enforced, emotions suppressed, Conflict reduced to procedure, not peace, not harmony, but numb stability. That is not salvation, that is incubation. When the Chaos Gods finally die, historians will mark it as a victory. They will be wrong, because the galaxy's greatest enemy will not arrive screaming from the immaterium. It will arrive quietly, and by the time anyone notices, nothing will feel wrong anymore.